open up the live.
Got it.
And that's how I do it. So, and I will hit record
On a phone
also.
too, right? You could just kind of like, if you have your phone,
Yeah, you could do
you know,
that.
not have to look into. You still have to kind of look down, I suppose, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
you could do that. So hello everybody. I think we're live on YouTube. Happy Monday. It's March 10th and we're late with our live stream today because we were having some server issues. So we usually use a different program and I've been really liking it because it allows us to display chats on the screen and watch the chat go as we talk. So that's been nice. And it also allows me to set up the live stream ahead of time and populate right into that. So people have a place where they're expecting to see the live start. So there might be a little bit of a lag today with people finding us who are still sitting at the other stream waiting for it to start. Sorry about that. Sorry for the confusion. We'll try to get it smoothed out for next week, but this is tech and I am not a good tech person. So before we get started with the chat today, Deborah, do you want to introduce people to Solid Ground if they're not familiar?
Certainly. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or authoritarian measures such as medical mandates in their workplace, university, children's schools, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join our peer support groups for $10 a month, and you can join our forum on locals for just $5 a month. To find out more, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Thanks very much, Deborah. It looks like some people have found us. Hello, Ninja Kitty. Hello, Cody R, Sour Kiwi, James from Bahia, and Clem62. Nice to see you guys today. Yeah, it's just one of those days, I guess. I don't know about you guys, but I am not liking the time change.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm the only person that likes it in
Yeah.
the world.
Extra hour of daylight, but I always get, it takes me a few days or even up to a week to get like my body adjusted to it. Like I feel like it's not supposed to be this late. And like I had a hard time getting up and kind of getting it together today, but
Well, I had this weird moment where yesterday it was like mid-morning and I looked at my phone and then I looked at the clocks on my stove and on the wall and even though I knew there was a time change coming this weekend, it was weird. It was kind of disorienting. I was like, "Oh, already?" I thought that was tomorrow. I don't know what I thought. I thought it was like we had one more day. But I had been using my phone all morning, so I'd been orienting myself to the time that my phone automatically was displaying. So the clocks were what was weird. And I had this thought about how through our digital connectivity, our reality is being mediated. And it felt very like kind of meta. Like there's other ways in which that's the case as well. We all, we've been talking so much about the ways that people are disagreeing with each other. There's this real polarization, this narrative, counter narrative sort of sense of the way that we interact with other people. There's a lot of intense feeling about political things that are happening outside of ourselves. Like I saw this clip of Ellen DeGeneres being really sad about something that she didn't really say what it was. She was like, "I'm so sorry, but this just has to change. It's really awful." And I think she was talking about political polarization. I think that's what I took it to mean. And she's just like grief-stricken and upset about it. And I thought, how, like, honest question, and not to give grief to this person, but like, how is your life being immediately impacted? Is this just sort of a psychological impact that you're feeling because you're too tapped in? And I wonder that about a lot of people who are so caught up in the political discourse and so upset about it. Like, how is your life actually immediately impacted? Is this just you watching the shadows on the cave wall and having a response to it? But the phone was what kind of got me started.
Ellen also said multiple times that if Trump won, she was going to move out of the country.
And she
So I
did,
don't,
right?
yes. And then
England?
she came back. Yes. And she's back.
Mhm.
So I don't know, but I do think that and we were talking about this earlier before we started the stream, but I do think people are just being so plugged in is just problematic in so many ways, because I'm experiencing a lot of that kind, like a lot of conversations that are just very difficult to have based on where I stand politically or what I voted for, and then what's been the result of that. Now that a couple of months have gone by and things are changing and happening and all of that. So it's been very difficult for me because I have family members who are directly impacted. Their jobs are directly impacted by some of the, political, the cuts and things that are going on. So there's this real pull that I feel, because in some way it's almost like they're suggesting, why would you do that? Like you're part of the problem or partly responsible. There's sort of that feeling. And then in my personal home with my partner, it's my partner feels the opposite. I mean, it's the complete opposite. For him, this has been a positive thing. And for him, there's been a lot of opportunity that's come along because of some of these changes. So I'm just like feeling pulled so hard in two opposite directions. And I've been having a hard time. I mean, I'm just going to be honest about that, because I want to be supportive and loving and caring for my family, especially the fact that they're being impacted by this with, pay cuts and other things. And at the same time, I want to be supportive of my husband. And there's still things that I think that are being done that are positive, but I can't even have that kind of conversation because the door's not even open to talk about that part. It's all the doom and gloom. It's all, so, and I feel torn about that too. I'm upset that they got hit this way. I didn't see that. I didn't foresee that, to be honest, because one is in law enforcement, and law and order was something that, their campaign was really pushing. So to cut from law enforcement was very shocking to me. But other than that, I can't really in general have an open dialogue because there's so much shut down. And then there's so much of this whole, Christine, see what's happening. Christine, you need to be more upset. You need to actually be angry. Why aren't you angry as us? And I just can't live in that state of rage. I felt like when I left Antioch and all of this woke ideology started, I was a very angry person at that time. Everything made me angry. I was super glued to news all the time. I was super like anybody that would listen, I would go on a long tirade about what this, regime was doing to us. It was a bad place for me to live. I just started coming out of that rage and anger space into a place of more peace and just acceptance. And that's prior to the election. I came into a place of more peace and comfort and just feeling okay. I don't want to be brought back into that anger. And that's my choice if I choose to respond in that kind of way. But it's kind of like poking a bear and waiting for it to bite your finger off, and I'm not wanting to go back there. So that's been really hard for me. I mean, we talked about this in my group actually last week about the different experiences people are having with these conversations.
Christine,
So,
can I ask you a somewhat personal question?
sure.
Thank you for sharing about the anger, which
Yeah.
I really understand that anger. I think you and I had very, very similar experiences. How did you, what do you think led to you moving and kind of keeping up with all the news and watching all the things that were happening? You're gradually able to let that go, and your horizons expanded, and maybe the anger began to fade. Do you have any idea what
Um,
helped that happen?
yeah, I mean, I've been in therapy a long time and I'm not embarrassed to admit that. So my therapist was actually really helpful with this. And I happen to have a really good therapist who's a non-ideological,
Mm,
non-woke person and is not ever bought into that way of thinking. So
hmm
she helped quite a bit with just giving me a little bit of perspective and focusing on some of the good things that I had in my life, trying to live with a little bit more gratitude for some of those things.
mm,
Understanding that, me leaving was kind of a brave thing to do. She kind of reframed it so that it
mm,
became more about me stepping into my own power and me making the
Mm,
decisions that were
hmm.
best for me. And over time, it kind of helped me just start remembering that like there's still life outside of your professional world. There's still concerts you want to see and a ball game you want to go to and a vacation you want to take. And all of those conversations, it took a while, I would say a couple years, but
Hmm.
all of that over time led to me kind of cooling off and
Hmm.
cooling down and also starting to just think, maybe there's something about this that was meant to happen and I just
Hmm.
need to embrace the suck a little bit
Mm.
and kind of roll with it. And then I found places to volunteer. So I found CTA, and that was really
Hmm.
valuable. And there's a couple other, I did a lot of podcasts during that time with Leslie, and
Hmm.
we had another young woman, Carrie, who is also on the channel. And I think
Oh, yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that over time, it was multiple things that helped me kind of bring the temperature down.
Well, I'm happy for you that that happened. For me, it seems like a roller coaster that
Hmm.
I sometimes am surprised slash dismayed how occasionally uh I will experience intense anger over what I have experienced. And then, other times I don't think about it that much.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's an unfortunate sort of side effect, I think, of what you and uh, I think a lot of us here have experienced.
Yeah, I think
Probably a
it's a
lot of
form,
listeners
to me, it feels like a form of grief. And I worked with grief a lot early in my career, and it kind of felt like a form of grief where, there was sort of this up and down roller coaster, and navigating that was hard. But I'm noticing now that, yeah, I still do get angry every now and again, but the time, the space in between these anger waves is a lot farther and they're less intense. And so I kind of liken that to the grief process as well. And I think that was part of it is I really did have to grieve losing something that was very, very meaningful to me.
Hmm.
And then I was upset with the policies that and the mandates and all of these other things that
Hmm.
were happening on top of that.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah,
Mm.
roller coaster for sure. Aaron, I can relate to that.
Well, it's made it a little bit difficult for me to empathize with the people who are upset now. We just had
Mm.
friends in and who live
Yeah.
in Vermont, and they're good friends, but they're very very much in tune with sort of progressive politics, and uh I could tell like they were really hurting. And I have patients who have it's interesting. I have patients who have lost jobs recently because of DEI and because they questioned DEI and got mobbed. I have other patients who are losing jobs due to these cuts. And so when I think when I'm in my professional space, I can join people where they're at. It was a little harder with my friend who really is suffering because from her perspective, um, something catastrophic is going on in society. But I get angry, and I have another friend who was telling me the same thing. He's thinking about moving to Europe to escape this. But the anger have not specifically at them, but at the people who are upset. The thing I keep wanting to say is, where were you? Like, if you were concerned about this, you could have had perhaps a moderating impact on the left and have spoken up and maybe spoken out against some of the craziness that
Yeah.
was going on. And so I think I sort of am naturally an empathetic person usually. But I've been finding it hard to empathize with the people who are upset right now because during the things that were going on during the Biden administration, I didn't hear people saying, "Hey, let's think about this in terms of the grounds that support these ideas and where these ideas are likely to lead." I didn't hear
Mm.
much of that. And I suppose there's some part of me, and it's not a part I particularly like, that's a part of that almost is quite kind of like I told you so kind of part, because
Mhm.
I don't know, everything that has happened since October 7th is exactly what I said was going to happen publicly. And it's just it's like watching it happen is just sort of like, I don't know, it feels, and then having people be upset now that there's this huge counter push, it's hard to feel empathy for that.
I one of the things that I've kind of wondered is there's this in the first place I really heard this would have been at university, at the graduate school that I was at in 2019, 2020, 2021-ish, with Trump supporter being this really negative thing.
Hmm.
And so 2016, I didn't like Trump. I used to have arguments with my mom about it. She liked
Hmm.
him. And I'd be
Hmm.
like, how can he's a buffoon, And I
Hmm.
just had sort of this this take on being perplexed that people were on board with this guy and this stuff. But it seemed to shift over to a responsibility, like a sense of this is your doing. You
Hmm.
voted for him. It's your
Hmm.
fault. And now I see that in a really big way this time around with the people who are um, cutting people out of their lives if they
Hmm.
voted for this guy. So it's whatever is happening on the political landscape right now. You were on this team or you were on that team, and you are responsible for what is going on that's negative right now. And
Hmm.
I don't think that doesn't seem like the way we used to see politics. We'd have politicians do things that were more desirable, less desirable, but we wouldn't then turn to the people who voted Republican or Democrat and hold them personally responsible
Hmm.
for these things.
Right.
Like, I'm not, I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of the stuff that I see going on with Trump that I feel like, oh, well, that's good. That seems like a positive move that shifts things back. But then there's other things that I see going on, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, I
Hmm.
don't know what to make of that, or that
Hmm.
concerns me.
Hmm.
So it's a mixed bag, and I think that for probably a lot of people, there's some degree of nuance in their take on things. Like, and anyway, I just kind of wonder, what are your thoughts on that sense of responsibility and application of blame?
I
I,
mean, I'm
I,
in the
I
midst of, yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
I
Mm,
was just gonna say that I've really struggled with that. I used to be part of a group called Braver Angels,
Mm.
and I thought it was I never uh I was on the left uh for most of my life, and I really I can't identify with that party anymore. But I saw all this weird stuff going on in university life, and I was desperately looking for a, like a place with normal people. And critical therapy antidote, I think, was sort of just getting off the ground. The Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism was just being formed. This is about the time that Jody Shaw made her video. And the only place I could find was Braver Angels, which I really liked at first. Because no, but the only reason I liked it is because nobody in that group was out to get me.
mm,
And because I was objecting, this was just when anti-racism was coming out, and most people were taking anti-racism at face value, and I was saying, I don't think this is a good idea. This sounds like a terrible idea. And people are saying, what? You don't like anti-racism, so you like racism? Which of course what is supposed to happen. That's the rhetorical process behind the naming of it.
mhm.
But there was one person in particular who was, I was sort of put into the red side because you have to choose to be whether you're red or blue. Um, and so I kept representing the red side. But I couldn't say that anyone on the blue side necessarily disagreed with me on any particular point I was making. But I kept feeling like they were questioning me and interrogating me about my beliefs, which are very like common sense, humanistic beliefs. And I felt like I had to take responsibility for explaining myself, but I never felt like they were taking responsibility for either acting on my explanations or um, learning from what I was saying. Like they were not changing. And I'm not saying they have to change just because I explained my view, but they weren't clarifying their own views either. They were just kind of neutral. So I found myself in a place where I wasn't interested in being a part of Braver Angels anymore because I ended up just kind of feeling like people were irresponsible. They were in there just like they're like, "Oh, like I just want to be around nice people." And I understand that. I really do. But let's not pretend we're doing anything other than that. So one lady in particular, she would always come and she would say, I used to tease her that her name was Miss What About because she would say, "What about microaggressions?" And I'd be like, "Well, okay, here's Lillian Field 2017. Here's what he said. What do you think?" And she'd be like, "Interesting." But then next week, "Well, what about what's it called? Implicit bias?" And I'd be like, "Well, is it, the research has shown that that concept is very unstable and that the quote biases that show up in that test are not reflected in actual real life behavior." But it just never got through. And so anyway, the point is I found myself in a place where I was starting to feel judgy, where I was starting to want to hold people responsible for not understanding what they were supporting, essentially, or even for like not asking questions of, if you're going to ask these questions of the person who's quote in the red slot, why aren't you asking these kinds of questions of people who are in like the extreme blue? Like why is that conversation not happening? So I found myself sort of feeling like I wanted to walk away from that organization because I don't know if I'm articulating it very well, but at the end of the day, I found myself feeling angry that um, like the questioning all sort of seemed to be on one side, and you almost end up feeling like a zoo exhibit, but it's not a nothing, no one's changing as a part of this. There's no process of education going on. It's just it's people being okay with their differences, which is great, but I found myself saying, "Hey, you got to be more responsible than this, and than just letting this stuff happen and go unquestioned because you want to be a nice person." And so I don't like being that guy. I don't like telling people what they should do or what they should think, but I do find myself sort of losing patience a little bit with people who don't sort of stop and think about what their thoughts are or where their thoughts lead. So,
I
Deb,
think it comes from the lack of questioning, I think stems from intellectual laziness and also identity. I grew up in a very sort of democratic, liberal family, and I 100% took it for granted that the Democrats were sort of the good people.
Mhm.
And therefore, I could look to them to tell me what views I should hold and what causes I should embrace. And therefore, everything I read was more representative of those views than other views. And it was easy. It was like a conveniently packaged sort of it's like a pre-made meal. You don't have to do a lot of work. And when things started occurring that I didn't think the Democratic Party was responding to well, I started to seek outside sources for opinions. And it was actually really exciting and intellectually challenging and then stimulating to do that. But I think so much of what we've seen, and particularly since 2020, is people getting into these ego states of, well, but I know this is what the good people think. This is what we're supposed to think. And so we have our signs in our yard saying, in this house, we believe. And they're fighting. It's almost like they're fighting for self-preservation, because if any of those views are questioned, that sense of self, which is more of a received sense of self than an explored sense of self, crumbles. And people have different, I try to explain to people that everybody is detecting and interpreting threats differently. And so much of it is based on what we're reading. So somebody who is just reading mainstream media is hearing all these terrible things that, the right or the Republicans are going to do, and the other side is having that same experience. And so I just think so much of it is based on what people read. And if they were reading more widely, they'd be having these conversations. They'd be challenging themselves. They may or may not vote differently, but they'd certainly have a wider perspective. But it's all gotten frozen into ego states and people fighting to prove that they're good people and to keep their identity intact.
Yeah, that kind of comes back to reality being mediated through your feed, what's being shared with you. And that there was that Twitter thing a while back where this woman went, or maybe it was an Instagram or TikTok thing originally. I saw it on Twitter, but where she went through and showed how on her boyfriend's phone, the same post had a completely different set of viewer comments than that post on her phone. It was totally different, where you couldn't even find the comments that each was seeing. And the way that we're being programmed by either getting into a relationship with algorithms where it's showing you more of what it thinks you want to see, it ends up putting you into this eddy of confirmation bias, or whether it's something that's being designed to be divisive. I don't know. I don't know if at the end of the day that is as important as just recognizing that you're being manipulated. Deborah, I think you were wanting to say something.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One on the Braver Angels, which I'm sitting here going, who was your facilitator? Like, were you in an alliance? Were you in
I don't know what an alliance is.
Okay, it doesn't matter. What I want to say about it is, I understand, one, it sounds like you wanted like good intellectual, I'm looking at mine, you're looking at yours, let's have like some good understanding. And I'd say it's more it's more designed for reducing affective polarization. So it's more designed to end up like, I don't hate you.
Right.
So so you may get the kind of thing you're talking about, but you might not. And in fact, like there's a whole thing of like, you might not change anyone's mind. Don't even come in with thinking that. But I understand the dissatisfaction of like, I'd like to see someone chewing on this, like I'm chewing on this. Like I'm actually chewing on this. Like I'm actually questioning my own priors, and I'm reflecting, and I'm taking another input, and I'm actually and like you're over there just kind of like not. So
well, I think the thought I had at the time was, here, I don't fit in here, and the reason is because I want something different than what the group is designed to do. Like I don't feel like I had a problem with not, well, no, I don't hate anyone who's on the far left on spec, although I'm very angry at the, at the people who have gone out of their way to ruin life. But I think I went in from a perspective of wanting people to really understand what's going on, and wanting to persuade, I guess, and that's not really what it was about. So
I just want to say that because it is like you wanted something meatier and like some good nourishment, and it's like not in there. I do want to say I'm going to be actually facilitating a red-blue gathering of the first 100 days of the Trump in office here in New York City, like at the beginning of April. So that's going to be, we'll see what that's like. But I wanted to go back to this different worlds, being in these different funnels. I had a conversation with someone I know from a sort of philosophical, spiritual community that I've been a part of. And he's been writing, he likes to think that can take all sorts of perspectives, but he went to CPAC and, was kind of hoping like he'd see certain things. And he wrote, it was hard to not see the disdain dripping through what he wrote. And I said, can I talk to you about this? Because I know that he wants to try to always see the positive in certain things. What's the truth? And I mean, he did try, but already he was scared that J6 people there were going to come and harm him. So he didn't even talk to anybody there because he was afraid something would happen to him, except to ask for like, where's the bathroom? And I'm like, so you're kind of already, and he was freaked that some people didn't have masks on who were sick. He was sure he had gotten COVID from these people because they didn't care about, vaccinating, and they weren't. And I was like, how could you? And then he said like they were hateful. And he did list things that the people believe, some of which I agree with, some I don't. And he said that we're all in the upside down. Like the entire thing was upside down from what I think.
Wow.
And a couple of the things I did agree with him on that I can't remember what they were specifically, but I did ask him even before we started to talk. I said, well, just so I know what media ecosystem you're in, like, what do you read? And it was like New York Times, Washington Post, The Atlantic, NPR. He said he used to look at National Review and maybe he used to look at Breitbart, but he doesn't really look at them anymore. And so I was kind of like, and this is someone who prides himself. I won't give the name of it because I don't want to sort of dox him, but he has a podcast that's all about how growing your own perspective. And so I didn't even talk with him that long because, and my heart hurt. Like I was shaking too. Like I was at my family this weekend too. And I was like shaking inside of like rage and like,
oh goodness.
Like I was forced to watch 60 Minutes. Like,
oh.
And I wasn't forced, but it would have been awkward. So anyway, it was so hard talking with him, and he was sick, and so he didn't have all of his energy there. But I realized at a certain point, because I said, well, he was upset that they weren't. It's called CPAC, but they weren't being conservative because they're being really revolutionary. And I said, well, what they want to go back to is more traditional, like what the Constitution is, like what they want to be okay to have religion. But he was very fixed on, well, James Burnham and these conservative thinkers say that we should do things slowly and prudently. And so that wasn't working. And then I said, I had a list of things to go over with him that I had some question about. And one was sort of the COVID tone. And immediately he got into like masks were good and all these Trump voting people counties died. So therefore something, right? And I hurt. I said, my heart hurts so bad. I said, I don't even know if I can keep having this conversation. Like I was like, I don't even know how to proceed. Because what it was my dysregulation was very high.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I could see the defensiveness.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out how to skillfully anything because I was having so much of my own reactivity and I didn't want to do anything like damaging. Like at all. Now I did since then send him the link to ARC because that feels like that's more the sort of conservative thing that he'd feel comfortable with. So like I said in that but I could see myself like all these conversations that it feels so hard to broach. Like even my sister was posting about the words that Trump said can't be on the websites. And my niece was doing it too. And it's like, look at, they're doing censorship. And they're taking away money from colleges. And I said to my sister, would you be curious hearing a perspective about why that might be going on? And she said, I can't.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like she just couldn't. She goes, let's just see what happens. And I said, and the only thing I said back, and I thought that's a boundary, but I just said, well, I think we might both agree that it's not good to discriminate against anybody.
Yeah. Nicely done, Deborah. That was
but it hurt.
Very humane.
It hurt,
yeah.
And I just feel my family, my mom just want to keep going how terrible. And I could say with her, like, I am very worried about the foreign, what do you call it? International things that are being decided. I'm worried about this tariff thing. So I can go with her and say, yeah, I am kind of concerned. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I can say that. But, this other like,
As somebody who's just resisted having a team here, I don't have a team. There's not the other side. I've kind of tried to avoid using that phrase because I don't feel like I have a side. I'm not a fan of what I see the Republicans doing. There are some things that I'm like, yes, that needed to be done. Good. I'm not a Republican. I'm definitely not a Democrat. I can't stand what's been going on over there, but it doesn't make me a Republican to not be a Democrat. I'm just, and I don't, when you have this list of media, this is how ignorant I am on this. I don't know that the New York Times or whatever those other ones are. I don't know about those being biased, really. I've resisted even paying attention to that stuff. I've heard that the Atlantic is very biased. That's the only one that I really recognize. That's how out of this I have been. And what I just have been feeling like I'm witnessing is people needing other people to say that they believe what do you believe what I believe? And that's how I'm going to know if we're in a tribe together. Are we safe with each other? Are you out group or are you in group? What do you believe? And I see this running right down families with people needing their husband or their wife to say that they believe what I believe. It's not because they're setting policy within their family. It's because they just need an agreement. We just need to agree that we have this common worldview. And this is really interesting. It seems to go through a lot of our cultural experiences and connections. I think that there's something related here, but I'll get every now and then somebody who I had a while back, I think we were talking about surrogacy. We were talking about Jennifer Law. And I think this is where it happened in the reproductive policy conversations we've had. Somebody said, why aren't you talking about circumcision? Why aren't you paying more attention to the issues of circumcision? I mean, this is a barbaric thing that's being done to babies. And I'm like, well, I have thoughts about that, but that wasn't this conversation. And they're like, why are you having any conversation if that's not the conversation you're having? That needs to be addressed. And I think there are so many things that are important to us based on our life experiences or just the conversation we're having right now. Why does everything have to be elevated to the most, replace what you're talking about with what I think is really important? Look at it the way I look at it, or else we can't get along. We can't even know each other. I have to turn my back on you. And I think that it's fascinating to me that we're here. And I think we've allowed these things to tell us what's important and what kind of person we are. And there's so much more to us than these things. And there's so much less to us also. Like the things that make you who you are, the things that make your life what it is, are about the little routines, patterns, and habits, the ways that you play with your dog or talk to your kid, read a story, go outside and look at a freaking flower. I mean, it's just like, there's so much less to us than all this shit. Sorry. And there's so much more to us. And I don't understand how we've allowed ourselves to be carried into these currents where there's only these little acceptable realms of dialogue and thought. And we're trying to match our thought pattern up with the next guy's thought pattern in order to find out if they're a decent human being. What is happening? I'm sorry, I rant over. I'm off
I would say it's so hard. It's like I try to do like in this other community, I'm in the Unspeakeasy, or even on the two-way where it's people trying to have conversations and understand each other. There's a lot of MAGA people in the chat, and like they are quite often like nasty. And I'll try to do something, like if they do something that's funny, I try to like or bring in some cultural reference that's more of a human thing we can connect on. And thank God my family, we went to go see the Putnam County Spelling Bee at a high school production. And that was although they injected a couple political things into that, unfortunately, but that was like my family, like we laughed. We just like the kids were amazing. They sang really well. So that type of thing, if you can get some joint entertainment or something with people, that's fun and song and dance like that worked pretty well for us. We played Scrabble, so that kind of worked.
Were they spelling out words like microaggression?
No, but that's what I had to listen to 60 Minutes, and I was just like, and it was the first segment was on, and I don't actually know, I need to look into this, like these inspector generals that Trump fired, but it made it sound like there's no whistleblowers anymore, and there's no, it's all, whatever. And I just know what 60 Minutes has been doing lately. So I was like shaking under the table while I'm like, because I want to say something and I can't. My mother's going,
Yes.
see.
Yes.
So I guess a good question might be, how do we disengage when the conversation starts to go there? How do we bring it back down or bring it to something that's more personally relevant and less political? Like SCOVL 7, so much energy invested into things we have no control over. And
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that. Yes, that the one thing that I've been trying to do with at least with my family and with the really intense people is, well, we can't control this. What can we control?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no use in like getting all riled up over something that you personally cannot do anything about. So maybe we're just not we don't have to talk about this, and literally try to change the subject altogether. Like, let's talk about other things that are more interesting. I mean, I think that's really, for me, that's the best direction to go into, is that I can't control these policies. This person who's so upset can't either. So why are we mired in all of this anger and vitriol and venom and all of that? Let's step back from that and sort of what do we have control over? Hey, we're going to see a comedy show tonight. Awesome. Like let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, this is a real story. I was with a family member and we were going to go see a comedy show that night. So, and I had to say, I can't control this. You can't control this. Why are we pissing ourselves off right now? There's no point to that. Because I feel like you, Deborah, a lot, where I'm like, and I'm shaky and I'm like nervous and my chest hurts and I know what's happening to me physically. And, I don't want to live in that place. I just can't, my psyche can't afford to live in that place. That's where I'm at. So
yeah, Christine, I actually, now that you say that, and Deborah, now that you say that, I had this experience a couple, like a week or so ago when the Zelensky thing happened, where I was
the meeting.
Yeah, I was at the art studio where I do pottery, and a couple of ladies were talking about it, and one of them was just having this really emotional reaction, really negative anti-Trump emotional reaction. And I don't know how I feel about that meeting. I mean, it was weird. I don't know. I have thoughts, but I've started to get that shaky feeling like there's going to be a test. There's going to be a test, like there's going to be a some sort of a litmus test applied here. And that is a scary feeling. So it's nice to have some way to shift things away from those inflection points. Who is it here? Student of Rhythm says the essence of virtue signaling is to focus on things outside of your control. And James from Bahia thinks Deborah is on form today.
I wanted to actually add another thing, because I'm realizing for myself about getting down to core issues, because and I don't even want to get into was it right or wasn't it right, but I have to say my visceral reaction to the thing with Zelensky, it surprised me. I haven't cried in a couple of years, and I don't even know what happened to me. I broke down sobbing like a child for like an hour. And it felt, I'm like, what is it? Because I could still have enough wherewithal to go, what is this? Like, and it wasn't even about what should we do with Ukraine? What should we not? There was something like a child just being scared of really strong energy of somebody just like kind of going at somebody. Like it just, something in me, it just like freaked the hell out of. And so I thought, I don't even, again, I can't say what should we be doing or not, but I just was like, okay, I've got some issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, and I had this sense, I watched people on both sides who, like, I know a woman who just feels because in her childhood, she was so gaslit by her parents. And when she sees like the Democrats doing things that's gaslighting, like, for her, it's got this a completely higher level of emotional distress than like somebody else might have about it. And so we were starting to talk about like when our own, personal whatevers, from childhood, like getting triggered, and the extent to which, I try not to take that out on anybody. I didn't go to anybody just because I had the degree of distress and tell them there was something wrong with them, for it. I just was like, I don't know if I want to have a conversation about this topic right now because I'm in like child brain. I'm not. Some people wanted to have a conversation with me. Let's get on a Zoom, and I'm like, I'm not in like linear adult thinking mode right now.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
so we can talk a couple days.
Mm.
I think for me, what thinking about all three of you guys are all helping me to think about this and under what circumstances. I think for me it depends on and Deborah, the child brain really makes sense to me because I was having this conversation with my friend who's sort of on the far left just last evening, and I was feeling, really calm, really cool, and I didn't feel drawn into that perspective. Um, but just last week, I did get em emotional and angry about some of this stuff that's going on, and I think it's for me, it's the degree to which I feel that I'm under threat when this is happening. And
Mhm.
when I was at the university, I was under threat, all the time in a way that really had a direct impact on my livelihood. And I think at the times where I can't be part of a conversation in a constructive way is when I am remembering, or someone used the term ego state, I think Jennifer did, uh, when I am in an ego state that is similar to the state that I was in during that time.
Mm.
I used to have friends in Vermont, and they would talk about some of the things that their daughters were being taught, or and I'd go out of my mind, and I was out of the university at that point, but he my friend was a teacher, and he was talking about the all-day DEI trainings they were doing, and
Wow. All
that
day.
put that
Ugh.
yeah that put me into like that ego state where I'm like, not only, geez, how many kids in this state can read at grade level? Is that really what you should be doing? But I was also, I think my ego state changed to what really set me off was the idea of a mandated DEI training,
Mm.
which took me back to the time when I was in the university, and I was very much not myself. I raised my voice and was yelling about this stuff. So because the ego state that I was in was, if you would have labeled it, it would have been under threat, enter combat mode.
Mhm.
One other quick thing I want to say about this child state, because I actually had someone work out this with me, and I have to keep watching it. I have this desire to bridge. I do it, but a lot of it is coming from a child place who just wants the parents to stop fighting.
Yes.
Like there is like I want to, yeah, I'm going to cry right now. It's like I want to control the situation. Like I
Yeah.
don't want it in, and so that's not a great place to be doing
Sure.
any of this from. And I also notice it is coming up a lot, and I have to catch myself. Like, how much control am I wanting to have to not have people fighting?
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's really it's really insightful. I've
No,
wondered
makes
about that.
sense.
Like
Thanks.
so
Thanks.
much of the division in us is this sort of, it's based on this at root, like a family breakdown, like
Mm-hmm.
this breakdown of fundamental foundational safety and integrity. And I think that it ripples through us so much. And I wonder how much of it does actually stem from family breakdown, like really from the division between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, something you said there though, Deborah, that's probably a longer thread though to tug on. Oh, people are funny. Cody R has a funny joke about me being a pothead because I do pottery. Yeah, that's about the only kind of that's the only kind of pot you'll find me with.
Yeah, I
Anyway.
was gonna say person
Just
least
reading at the
likely to be a
beginning on the
pothead.
shelf. No.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Funny.
about the only kind. Uh, what's something happy in your lives this week, or something that you're looking forward to? Jennifer, you got a big smile when I said that. What's going on for you?
Yeah, and keep it clean, Jennifer.
NSFW?
Yeah, yeah. PG-13, please.
I have nothing to say for myself.
I pass. Right.
Oh, I think the blush says plenty.
Yeah. Jennifer's a cutie. All right, Aaron, how about you?
Oh, something nice that's going on. Well, you guys were talking about the little things, right? And the little things that make you happy. I got myself an old-fashioned straight razor that I've been shaving with. And you can fill up this cup with hot water and it keeps your shaving cream all like really scalding hot. And then there's this little ritual of sharpening the razor and stropping it. It's
Nice.
incredibly nice. It feels like a really nice way of taking care of myself and makes me feel just sort of debonair. But then when I walk downstairs in that debonair way, my wife's just like, cut it out. And so kind of pops my balloon, but I feel like James Bond for about 2 minutes every morning when I do this. So that's kind of fun.
That's awesome. I love that. There's something really tactile about it.
Oh, it's so much fun. Like
Yeah.
maintaining the razor and then like taking care of yourself by,
Mhm.
using the brush, and you've got this nice hot stuff on your face. It's fun.
That's cool. I love that.
It's really cool.
Clue Studio says I use a straight razor. That's cool.
I
Nice.
think it's such an awesome way to take care of yourself in the mornings.
Yeah. Deborah, how about you?
I just want to say, Aaron, when you first said you had a razor, aren't there those scooters like with the little
Oh.
you want some like little scooter skateboard thing?
Oh.
I'm like, I don't see that. Anyway, I think I want to go. I need to go out to the park. I was away for the weekend, but like things are starting to grow, like shoots, like little croci. I don't know, crocs are coming up, and so I'm looking forward to going. It's going to be like maybe about 60 degrees tomorrow, so I'm looking to go out and look for signs of spring.
I like your Latin conjugation of crocus. That's pretty cool.
You know, like it's a spelling bee. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Is it?
CROCI. Yes, it's an answer. It's like, yeah, you need
Oh,
to know
it is. It is. So it's a first declension Latin masculine noun. Nice.
Oh, I don't know much of it.
Very cool. I like that. I like looking for signs of spring. This is a beautiful time of year.
What about you, Leslie? What's making you happy this week?
Oh gosh. We went for a really nice hike yesterday out to Wallace Falls, which is off it's Western Washington, between where we live and Leavenworth, so off Highway 2. Really pretty. Just beautiful. Just like going through the woods. There's the smells of the dirt and the water and the plants all around, the ferns, moss everywhere. It's just beautiful. Pacific Northwest. And it's cold-ish, like 40s, and then you get to where you have to start peeling layers off because you're so heated up from all the uphills and stuff. Just finding a good walking stick is kind of a joy. Testing out different sticks and being like, oh, this helps me. So that's fun. And seeing the waterfalls, watching my kids popping around through the streams, and
what
I
a
enjoy
place
that.
to be a kid, right?
Oh gosh, it's amazing. It's a cool place. Yeah, it's like my youngest son and I always find gnome homes. We find the little places where we imagine that a gnome could live. Yeah.
Sure.
And then we find the troll homes too, so that's cool. Christine, how about you?
I'm going to be seeing a couple friends that I haven't seen in many months, so I'm looking forward to that. One of them I haven't seen since before the election, and we'd actually talked on the phone yesterday, and she was like, I really just want to understand. And we had a really great conversation that was like mature and adult and informative. And I appreciated that. So we are getting together with another friend of ours, and I think it'll be good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for bearing with us with our technical difficulties. If you have one more minute, I'm going to do something funny. Okay. Look what's happening now. Jenny.
God.
Oh my.
Jenny, UK time zone didn't change yet.
Oh, they
There
didn't
You
she
change
just,
is.
yet.
we're
Oh,
just
that's
wrapping up,
right.
Jenny. It-
I was on the other link and I was like, why is no one answering?
Oh,
Wait a
no,
minute.
the
it's
time changed here.
change.
And
Yes.
so I just wanted to let everybody see your beautiful face and let you
Oh.
say hello, goodbye before we end the stream.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
okay.
just realized it a second ago. I was like, oh, okay. How was it? Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Oh,
It
we
was
had a good time.
Be better with you in it next week.
Next week. Okay,
All
definitely.
right.
I think actually our clocks go forward this weekend too. So
Okay, so we'll be
try to
back on
far away.
track.
Yeah.
All
Not even
right.
on my car.
Well, it's good to see you. It was good to see all of you. And thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
everybody, for joining us in the chat.
Thank
See you
you.
guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.